call the meeting to order, and we're going to begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have two public hearings that we're going to begin with tonight. The first is on a proposed stormwater connection ordinance. And I wanted to just briefly turn it over to Maria or other staff just to give a little bit of context on what this is about.
Sure. Thank you. I'm going to invite Tom Roy, our Director of Public Works, just to briefly introduce the topic for us.
It's been such a fun night. Now we're going to talk about stormwater.
Does it get any better?
It doesn't. Simsbury has participated in a number of years in the, it's called the MS4 reporting requirement. It's municipal separated stormwater system. It's basically all of the rainwater goes into catch basins. All of those catch basins lead out to our local waterways. Through Connecticut DEEP for years we've been regulated. However, 2 years ago the permit that the state held with the federal government changed. As such, we are now under new reporting requirements that are far more restrictive than they've been in the past. One of the things that is required under the new regulations is that we have an ordinance in place, effectively a tool to help the town manage our own stormwater system. So in addition to the new reporting requirements, this tool is going to help us in the event that we have what's known as an illicit discharge. If somebody in their neighborhood was to see an outfall pipe that on a dry summer day was discharging a liquid, we'd want to find out what that was, and that's where this ordinance comes into place. In many cases, it could be a foundation drain or something innocuous hooked up, or in some cases, it could be something much more harmful to the waterways. And so with this ordinance, which is modeled after a state template that has then been customized to fit Simsbury, that would give us the tools necessary to impose the appropriate restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody, actually before we begin, are there any immediate questions for Tom from the board before we open it up? Okay, thank you, Tom. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this tonight? Yes.
Simsbury. I wasn't going to speak to this issue, but all of a sudden when I heard the ordinance put forward and explained briefly, all of a sudden a few things came off in the back of my head. And the first thing was 2 or 3 years ago, I saw a discharge coming out of Simscroft property in a pipe that would come out into the wetlands, and you can see it from the walkway, and the water would get discolored, and you would see a fungus that would cover the top of the water. At the time, I spoke with the DEP, and they said there was a drainage pipe coming from Simscroft that was draining into that wetland. And then for some reason or other, the representative went to the DEP and more or less told them not to give any information. And that was the end of it. I followed through with a fella that was associated in the Simsbury government and zoning. His name was Howard Beach. And I asked him about the pipe, and he told me that the pipe was there and that they were trying to find the source because there was a big problem with this gas station that abuts Andy's supermarket with a discharge from their gasoline tanks that have never been replaced as far as I'm concerned, and the discharge is either coming from the gasoline in the ground or the gasoline that's seeping from these tanks that had never been replaced, because the tanks that are in that service station and I think Mr. Roy may bear me out, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. If they rot, they're steel, and if they rot, that gasoline is coming out. And there's a state ordinance that whoever takes over that station, if they decide to pump gasoline to the public, they have to replace the tanks. To date, they do not, if you notice, they don't sell gasoline at that station, and they don't pump it, but they use it for their own private use, for their own personal automobiles. So my comment is that it's a good ordinance, provided the town does its job. And if the town is not going to do their job, and it's going to be the good old boy system, which we have that's so embedded in this town, it's disgusting, then you can have all the regulations you want. They're not going to do it. It's just going to be a paper, you're going to be a paper tiger, that's all. And thank you for allowing me to address this issue. But those are two issues you can start right out with. And as long as I'm up here, you want another issue. Why is it that Ironhorse Boulevard, every time you take a walk down there, and lately because of my lady, I can't walk that much, you see all the dirt coming out from Simcroft. I don't have an axe to grind with them, but you have all that dirt that comes out of there. And then they give you the, like Howard Beach, oh, don't worry, they're going to send the sweeper. You know, we just had Memorial Day parade, and I was honored because we had a lieutenant colonel, a Marine Corps colonel, that's going to be the attaché in Romania, combat decorated. But I was impressed because he was a colonel, a combat colonel, and he came to Simsbury and reviewed the parade. He didn't come as on an invitation. He came out of his own pride, and he reviewed the parade. And he didn't sit with a special chair or with a special seat. And that's the other thing, right? Memorial Day, that's a bad day for me. But nevertheless, Memorial Day, that's the Veterans Day. That's not for these summertime soldiers and sunshine patriots. It's our day.
That's 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Kalishman. Is there anybody who'd like to speak tonight on the stormwater connection ordinance?
Is there going to be another public audience after?
There will be public audience, yes. Yeah, this is specifically on this ordinance. Okay, hearing no other people, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that passes unanimously. So next, we're going to move on to our second public hearing of the night, the Neighborhood Assistance Act program proposals. Was there someone who wanted to set that one up, Maria?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks, Melissa.
So as you're aware, the Neighborhood Assistance Act program is run through the State Department of Revenue Services. This program allows businesses to receive tax credits if they invest in qualifying programs that are run by tax-exempt organizations or municipal agencies. This year, in order to qualify, organizations were required to submit an application to the town manager's office by May 7th. We received 2 applications, one from the Simsbury Volunteer Ambulance Association, and they are seeking funding to help support the cost of an ambulance replacement. And the second application we received was from the Simsbury Grange, who is seeking funding for an energy conservation project. So if these applications are approved, we will submit them to the Department of Revenue Services by the deadline of July 2nd. And then the department would issue a list of approved programs by September 1st. I just had 2 non-substantive changes that should be made to the applications if they are approved. The first on the Ambulance Association's application under page 3 is where you see the breakdown of revenues and expenditures. Under expenditures, I believe we need to break out and reflect there the total cost of the ambulance, which is $180,000. They want to see all the costs associated with the program so that it matches up properly with the revenues above. So that's just a non-substantive change there. The second, on the Simsbury Grange, we noticed that we had a discrepancy between the total funding requested on page 1, where it is reflected at 22,000. The figure is actually 23,500, which is reflected properly on page 3. So we would just need to make that change as well, but those are more form, not substance, so if they're approved, we would make those changes.
Okay. Great, thank you, Melissa. Is there anybody who'd like to speak on these tonight? Yeah, Susan.
Hi, good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Grange. We
Susan, can you
applied for the.
introduce yourself?
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry. Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Grange. As you may know, we applied for this program last year. We received a very, very small subset of what we applied for. Being kind of new to the program and not understanding the timeline and the rules, there were a couple of things that maybe the ambulance people might want to know right away, or another organization that's applying for it. The state program is a $5 million allocation. That's a set amount. It's allocated. They will disperse it to whoever applies for it and is successfully forwarded to the state. If they get more applications than the $5 million, which they typically do, they basically prorate the funding for all of the applications. So we were successful in getting a grant of $5,000 from Eversource Avangrid, but that was prorated based on them getting more money than more applications than they had money for. We found out the hard way that the grant funding is limited to businesses who are C Corps. You can't be an LLC, you can't be an S Corp, you can't be a lot of types of businesses that are many businesses in town. So this caused us kind of a glitch, because when we were trying to approach businesses to participate, we found out that they wouldn't be able to be eligible for the tax credit. The other issue is the timeline is we won't receive notice of funding for this until August, and then you have to have all of your commitments for the money by the end of September. I believe I might have that timeline a little bit off, but it's very short timing.
I think it's
Maybe mid-October. You have to have it all done by then. And as you may know, we have our big annual fair in the middle of September, which is a major, major thing that we prepare for. So I did call the state and talk to them about these glitches with the program, like could they open it up to other types of businesses? Could they change the timeline? Because for a community organization, with limited volunteers, it's such a short time window between, it was middle of August to middle of October to figure this out. And they said, no, they're not changing anything. So I just wanted to let people know that I tried talking to the state and they said, no, we're not fixing any of those obvious problems with the program. So we just have to kind of get ahead of it and ask, find corporations and ask them, even before we even know if we have the grant, which I kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable doing that. So this year we've submitted again. We're just focusing on the energy efficiency, just to try and get those projects wrapped up that we proposed. And if you know any corporations that you think might be interested, they basically will get a credit on their state taxes in exchange for donating to a community organization. And as I said, the money is already allocated, it's going to go somewhere, and it would be great if a little tiny piece of it would go to the Simsbury Grange, so.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah. Is there anybody else? Yeah, Kevin. Oh, geez, Mike, I'm sorry. That's your name. I called you Kevin. My apologies.
Okay.
Mike Delahanty, Simsbury Ambulance. The application reflects that we're trying to fund this replacement ambulance in 2 phases. The first phase has been completed. It's a direct mail campaign we did at the end of 2017. So the revenue from that is reflected on the application. And the second phase would be the appeal to the corporations and larger businesses, which is why we're hoping to use the Neighborhood Assistance Act to assist us with that. That being said, we have used this successfully in the past. It's been a few years. It was in the mid-90s, I believe. And it was very helpful and very successful for us. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them, but I think most of the information is straightforward there for you.
Great. I think when we get to discussing this later in the agenda under actions, we can
Very good.
take any questions. Great, thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this? Okay, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Before we move on to public audience, there was one thing I wanted to do. Maria asked that we add an item to executive session tonight concerning pending claims and litigation, Pavlik versus Town of Simsbury.
Would you like me to elaborate on
Sure,
that
you
now,
can,
or-
sure.
Sure. So this is a very recent case that involves our health insurance pool, and the town attorney and I would like to update you on that case, and if just would respectfully request that we add that to the agenda for this evening.
Is there a,
The motion?
yeah, do we? I
Yes,
think we need a
please. I'm
two-thirds
sorry.
vote.
We need a two-thirds vote of the body, and I did put language in the town manager's report that we would be looking for a motion to add an executive session pursuant to CGS 1-206B concerning pending claims and litigation, Pavlik versus Town of Simsbury.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, now public audience. Joan?
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. On April 19, 2018, I requested as part of my FOI request, quote, "complaints from staff regarding inappropriate communications and work-related performance evaluations," end quote. I received Part 2 of Jamie Rabbitt's personnel file. Jamie Rabbitt is the Director of Planning and Community Development with a salary of $117,880 plus benefits. I was told that there weren't any performance evaluations on file. I did receive a copy of a memo from the town's code compliance officer, Robin Newton, to the town's employees benefit and human resources coordinator, Eric Gomes, describing a personal issue dated January 25th, 2018. Robert Newton is a member of the Professional Employees Union. The memo states, and I quote, "On December 12, 2017, I verbally addressed a staffing complaint with Jamie, Director of Planning. At that meeting, I spoke with Jamie concerning the job duties I was performing on a regular basis that are not part of my job description. Specifically, that when planning department, secretarial, clerical staff is at lunch or out with sick days, personal vacation days, I am performing her job, and there seems to become an expectation by other administration staff that I am covering for her when she's out," end quote. It appears that there is an expectation that Robin Newton was selected to perform clerical duties that is non-compliant with her employment. Work assignments that are inconsistent with job descriptions are a violation of the Civil Rights Act. It is alleged that a recent complaint has been lodged against Jamie Rabbitt by Robin Newton. These actions could be a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is a federal law. It states, and I quote, "Sex discrimination for the purposes of employment law is treating a job applicant or employee adversely because of the person's gender," end quote. Quote, "It is a violation of Title VII for an employer to discriminate against job applicants or employees on the basis of sex regarding a broad range of employment activities, including hiring, firing, compensation benefits, work assignments, promotions, training, and other term or condition of employment," end quote. Presently, the town has many females in executive and management positions such as town manager, assistant to the town manager, and finance director. Everyone should be mindful that gender discrimination does take place in the workplace, and the protective laws that are in place should be vigorously enforced. The second memo I received was an email from Robin Newton to Assistant Town Planner Mike Liddon stating, quote, "Could you please confirm whether or not you have been asked to provide any work documents, memos, staff reports to Jamie for review," end quote. This response was, quote, "In 2 years, only once, the Hoskins Road special permit for the workforce overlay housing application. This was the first or second day with the town of Simsbury. Otherwise, all of my documents are sent directly to commission packets without approval or review by the director," end quote. As Director of Planning and Community Development, why has Jamie Rabbit abdicated his responsibilities for oversight on town plans? Is Jamie Rabbit's neglect to review and sign documents that are forwarded to commissions placing the town at risk? The Board of Selectmen agenda has continually placed Deepwater Wind Solar appeal for discussion in executive session without any actions taken. This is an expensive endeavor as attorneys are paid by the hour. According to the Board of Finance meeting minutes, July 18, 2018, Sean Kimball stated that, quote, "It was noted that this board, the Board of Finance, should review the project in terms of impact to the town's operating budget." First Selectman Lisa Heaven explained that while the town has budgeted for legal costs, this is an unanticipated cost which could cause this item to go over budget, end quote. The town assessor stated, quote, "At the current mill rate, the project will generate $1.1 million, depreciating thereafter down to 30% where it's anticipated to be level," end quote. Because of its farmland status, taxes yielded from the parcels now were indicated at $26,000,000. As we continue to appeal and what appears to be no progress in sight, attorney costs are escalating. What is the timeline for actions to be finalized? I recently visited the International Skating Center of Connecticut on Hop Meadow Street to get an update on the marketing and progress of the curling activities in the complex. I observed there was a manager and 2 figure skaters on the ice. It appears to me after several visits that the International Skating Center is poorly managed and is losing money.
Sean, that's
The
5
town has a
minutes.
ground lease with the International Skating Center that requires them to give the town an annual financial report and budgets. These requirements have not been provided to the town. Since the International Skating Center has made Simsbury unique, it is important that the town take an active role in the future of the complex, and all of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter at JoanCo, newsfeed on Facebook, and Simsbury Forum Topics. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Joan. Anybody else in public audience? Yes, please. Mr. Kalishman, do you want to go first?
No, you can go. Robert Kalishman, Simsbury. It's only fair that I announce that I have a dog in the fight. I'm running for state representative as a unaffiliated candidate. That's an independent. And the reason I'm running is that it's crazy what's going on. And it's all political connections, and everybody does what they're told to do, and the people be gone. Who bother the people? They're just around they get in our way. That's the attitude. Now, after Ms. Coe's statement, I'm very concerned. I'm concerned if these things, do we talk out of both sides of our mouth? Do we say with one thing that women are sacrosanct, that they have every rights a man has, and then we turn around when we figure our budgets, we put them in at less money than what we put the men like me in? Look at your pay scale in this building. And then when I hear what Ms. Coe says, I'm upset. What is it all about? What does it take for you to get it in your head? And the reason I say that is I sat home because I was unable to attend the meeting, your last meeting, which I think was the 14th, and I sat and I said to my wife, I said, we went out, we adopted a town manager, and the purpose of the town manager was to take the politics out of the government. And we went out and we hired her. And I said it was great. And I'll still say it's great if they play by the rules. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in my television, watching the hearing, and I hear Mr. Kelly, the senior member or the president or the chairman of the Personnel Board, a Democrat, say, we're going to make the rules for the employees for the town of Simsbury. That's not your purvey. You're out. The purvey, that's the purvey of the city, of the town manager, personnel. You're in a position to advise, and if you don't like what she's doing, you can fire her, but you can't direct her how to do it, and that's what you're doing. And you went through with a line of things, and you're going to, you must think you're a general in the Marine Corps. You'll never make us. We got Kellys, but not you, Chris. And the thing is that it's wrong. We got to take it out. We got to take the politics out of the personnel. We need a merit system. We say we have one, but we don't. We need a good merit system. We shouldn't have these abuses. And that's why I bring it up. And I sat there and I watched. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Went all this trouble to bring in a manager, put out the first selectman, and now we don't have a first selectman making the decisions anymore, I don't think. And now we have a chairman of the personnel committee making all the decisions for not only you, Sean. There was a few cracks made about you. One was, maybe we should give you a 0, and everybody laughed. It wasn't funny, in my opinion. And getting back to the thing, the town manager, she's the personnel director. And if you don't like what she's doing with personnel, fire her, get rid of her. But don't tell her how to run the government. That's what she went to school for. That's what we're paying her for. She's the personnel director. Period. There's no advice coming. And what they take it further, everybody's going to get a mark. Mr. Roy, you're going to get a mark as to whether or not you're a good man and you're proficient in your duties.
Thanks, Mr. Kalishman.
I'll finish up.
Okay.
Not to mention, you've been to schools, you've received numerous awards, and here's somebody that's a politician. He's going to tell you how to run your engineering, how to run the roads. And if you don't do his street or his client's streets that vote for him, you're going to get a zip. And thank you for allowing me to speak the issue.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Mike Rinaldi, and I reside at 32 Pinnacle Mountain Road. I wasn't going to come here because I thought the horse was out of the barn, but I saw something on your menu here that, something about the Henry James Memorial Phase 3 project. This is the worst thing we've ever done in this town in 45 years that I've been here. We almost done it with the high school. The high school, they try to push through a $100 million high school. The chairman of the Board of Education actually was so upset that he didn't get it through the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance that he resigned. They were going to put a $100 million high school in North Simsbury. What we got was a $42 million project, which after coming out to bid was $33 million, and it's a beautiful high school. Now we got this Phase 3 project. It's terribly flawed. It's the dumbest thing that I've ever seen, and I've been in this town for 45 years. Let me tell you why it's a dumb thing. First of all, the school was built in 1957. It was built for 1,000 students. It was cannibalized in 1986 to 900 students. This project will further cannibalize it to under 800 students. Now, it's well known that whenever you're going to build a new middle school or make a major renovation of a present middle school, that the 6th grade must be put into that school system. It's because of not only the educational possibilities of improvement, but for the psychosocial reasons that this age group fits together. If you ever coached Little League or you were a manager of Little League, you know what you dealt with, 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. These people function well together. Now, this school system is going to be cannibalized, so you can never fit 6th grade in there. And if you're going to put a $10 million wing on that in the future, forget about it. It's not going to happen. This project should not go forward. Now, the word fiduciary. We have one lawyer here. I don't know if your others are lawyers. Fiduciary, involving trust, especially between a trustee and a beneficiary. Now, the chairman of the Board of Finance said it was his fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this town. Only 5 members showed up that night. 2 members were opposed to the project. Linda Schofield and Mr. Prell. They were opposed to this project. Mr. Pomeroy was opposed to it initially. He said it was costly and it didn't provide moving the 6th grade into the school system. However, 2 people, Maura Wertheimer and Lisa Hevner, convinced Mr. Pomeroy to put it on the ballot. Now, once you put that thing on the ballot, the people in this town are very supportive of our school system. They knew that project, that school system should be improved. But it shouldn't be improved the way Phase 3 is coming through. Now, what happens once it gets onto the ballot? People voted 2-1 to approve it. Those people didn't have any idea what they were voting for. They were voting for a new project. Everybody wanted a new project, wanted to fix that school system, but not that way. This is a terrible thing that's happening. We're spending $24 million and we're not improving the school system. Now, we're spending $200,000 for a redesign of our school system. What happens when that redesign comes through and says, you know, you should have put the 6th grade in there. You should realign the school system to K through 2 and 3 to 5 and close one school. What if that comes through? Do we fire the Board of Education? Do we fire the superintendent of schools? He should be fired anyways for a lot of other reasons. But this would be tragic. If you have any way to stop this program, to go through this project, you should do it. If you don't, you will actually have a chance that will probably never come to pass again of putting the 6th grade into the middle school and improving the quality of our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in public audience tonight? Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the first Selectmen's report. I was honored this past Monday to join my fellow selectmen in participating in the Terriffill and Simsbury Memorial Day parades and ceremonies. This year marks the 100th Memorial Day parade in Simsbury and the centennial of the end of World War I. It was deeply moving listening to the Boy Scouts who read the profiles of soldiers from Simsbury who died in that war. Every May since 1986, Simsbury has honored people who go above and beyond in giving back to our community. Earlier tonight, 6 people were named hometown heroes: Susan Brackwitz, Kathleen Fallon, Jim and Mary Ann Flynn, Jerry Garlick, John O'Neill Jr., and James Ray. This evening, I was pleased to join my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen in recognizing these 6 extraordinary people. May is National Bike Month. As the month nears its end, I want to thank the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee for all of their work in organizing the Bike Challenge, the Selectmen's Ride, and all of the other events this month. With the warm weather upon us, a reminder that Simsbury adopted a carry-in and carry-out policy for trash in our town parks. That means anything that you bring into the parks need to be carried out. The policy was adopted about a year ago, based on research that it's better for wildlife, prevents illegal dumping, and can play a role in making our parks cleaner. I've heard from some residents who've noticed an uptick in trash, especially in around Rotary Park. Since this policy is relatively new, the Board of Selectmen has asked the Culture Parks and Rec Commission to monitor how it's working and provide any recommendations on possibly improving it. So that's something that we're continuing to watch, especially as our parks get more use. On the economic development front, the Board of Selectmen has formed an economic development work group to develop an ordinance to create a new economic development commission. This morning, Cheryl Cook and I had the opportunity to gather input from members of the business community. A couple of weeks ago, we heard from people who serve on our town's boards and commissions. I appreciated everybody who attended these meetings. The next step is going to be a draft ordinance to share with the full Board of Selectmen and get your input and ultimately bring to a public hearing. It's my pleasure as well to welcome 3 new businesses to Simsbury. Farmers Insurance agent Isaac Adams is celebrating the opening of his new agency at 522 Hot Meadow Street with a ribbon cutting at 5 p.m. on May 31. There'll be an open house to celebrate the opening of Simsbury's newest bike shop, Iron Horse Trike and E-Bike. That's Friday, June 1st, 2 to 5 p.m. at 19 Iron Horse Boulevard. And also, Peach Wave is under new ownership, and we'll be having a ribbon cutting 4 o'clock Wednesday, June 6th at 710 Hot Meadow Street. The next hazardous waste collection day is coming right up, Saturday, June 9th, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Simsbury Public Works Facility at 66 Town Forest Road. There will be an additional collection later on this fall, scheduled for November 3rd. We had initially reported that it was going to be October 27th, but that was a tentative date, so the final date is going to be November 3rd. And finally, Community for Care will be hosting a forum titled "I'm Going to College, Now What? Keys to a Happy, Successful Freshman Year." That's coming up on June 6th at 7 p.m. at Eno Hall. And this and a slightly more extensive version will be emailed out tomorrow. Maria?
Great, thank you. So under Board of Selectmen business, the age-friendly community designation, I did want to let you know that our social services director is currently researching this topic further for us. She is planning to report back at a June meeting. She was actually scheduled to be off today and did need a little additional time to prepare some research for us, but we are working on that and we'll get back to you during the month of June with additional information. A procedural issue, we do have a number of subcommittees of the Board of Selectmen that are currently meeting at the moment on a fairly regular basis. We have the Economic Development Work Group, we have the Work Group on the Appointment of Unaffiliated Voters, the Water Shortage Ordinance Subcommittee, as well as Personnel Subcommittee. And as a matter of practice, I wasn't sure if the full board wanted to be copied on all packets and materials, or simply if just the committee members wanted to receive that information. I wasn't sure what the practice had been in the past, and just wanted to be consistent and wanted to ensure that I was meeting your expectations in that regard. So if I could just get a little bit of feedback on that, it would be appreciated.
You don't need to send me the water ordinance one.
I think in the past, just the members of the subcommittee have received the
Yeah.
packets.
That's typically
And
the
then, when those subcommittees have something to report back to the entire board,
Okay.
if we require, documents to back that up, then
Okay.
we would distribute them at that point.
Yeah, if there's anything of particular interest, we've asked for it specifically in
Okay.
the past, but no need to copy everyone else, yeah.
Okay, very helpful, thank you. Great. Under departmental news and notes, we have a new staff member joining the library department. Rachel Gravel will be joining the Simsbury Public Library on June 4th. She will be our new head of borrowing and technical services. Rachel is a graduate with her MLIS from Simmons College, which is an outstanding, very well-regarded library science program here in New England. Most of her professional experience has been working in a college setting, but she has a tremendous amount of leadership and supervisory experience. I'm very excited about her appointment. I did have the opportunity to interview her, and I think she's going to add a lot of value to our organization, and certainly want to welcome Rachel next week.
Great.
For planning and development, a couple of development updates. The Zoning Commission did receive an application recently for the redevelopment of 690 Hot Meadow. That is the Ensign House, or some folks refer to it as the EB Mansion. This will be a mixed-use project, which includes plans for a restaurant, office, and residential space. The Zoning Commission will be considering this matter at their next meeting on June 4th. I was very fortunate recently and was able to tour the property along with our deputy town manager and our assistant town planner, and really get a good understanding of the vision that the current owners have for that property, and looking forward to seeing them move forward with that project. I think that's, again, going to really bring some life back to that property, and it's just a great community asset, so.
Can I just ask a question? That was heavily discussed a couple of years ago because they were looking for tax credits, the prior owners. And I don't remember if there was a conservation or historical easement on the front and the front lawn, because that was much debated. Do we get that ironed out?
So my understanding is that, and I will confirm for you all, but my understanding is that correct, that the front lawn does need to remain intact. So most of the work that will be occurring is actually to the existing structure.
Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to remember.
Yeah, good memory.
That was a big one.
And I'm sure many of you have noticed the site work that is occurring in the north end at the new location for the Dunkin' Donuts. So they did break ground on that site at 1261 Hot Meadow, and we are anticipating that they will be open in mid to late summer. From our police department, on May 9th, they were recognized and presented with a certificate by the North Central Multidisciplinary Team. This award was presented to the top 5 agencies in North Central Connecticut who had the most cases reviewed at MDT. Additionally, Acting Lieutenant Tom Sheehan, he is a board member for that group, and he was also given an award for his dedication to the group. Also from police, Lieutenant Siffo, I'm going to say Siffo because I will not do justice to his last name. Thank you. I graduated from the 139th Administrative Officers course that was held at the Southern Police Institute in Kentucky. It was an intensive program. He was away for a number of weeks. The course curriculum is designed to develop informed, effective, ethically, and technically competent law enforcement managers who are capable of assuming positions of leadership in their respective agencies. We're very proud of him. He achieved the highest academic average in that program while he was there and received a special award for that. So many congratulations to him for his good work and accomplishment.
That's outstanding.
It is. For Public Works, we have a new staff member joining Public Works. Eric Pelletier started work in the Highway Department as a truck driver. He comes from a civil site background where he spent 11 years working for a large commercial developer. He has hit the ground running. It is construction season, and he's been performing construction work and drainage work, and we're excited to have him on the team. So welcome, Eric. The East Weetog Street drainage improvements have been completed, and the first course of asphalt was placed on May 25th. Final restoration work is being completed, hopefully by the end of this month. We did want to thank the patience of the residents in this area who were understanding and cooperative during the course of that particular project. Also from Public Works, one of our crews went and essentially performed mutual aid to one of the communities that was hit by the tornado. And they were incredibly grateful for that mutual aid that we provided to them in their time of distress. Having been a town that experienced, some similar devastation due to natural disaster many years ago, we thought that was something we could certainly do when that call came out for crews to come by with either manpower or equipment, and so many thanks to Tom and his team for providing that mutual aid assistance to Southbury.
Good job.
From our town clerk's department, we have implemented e-recording. That is the electronic recording of land records. This is a more efficient way of recording land records for both the town and the recording entity. This is actually going to save considerable time as well as resources in terms of postage, envelopes, labels. So we are quite excited to be moving to this electronic method of recording land records. And by freeing up some staff resources, there are some other important initiatives I know that Erica and I spoke to during the budget workshop process, particularly around records management. And so this will will allow them to dedicate their time to some of those other initiatives that we're working on. And lastly, from the town clerk's office, our town clerk and our animal control officer are hosting a microchip clinic on June 23rd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Weetog Fire Station. What will also be available is the ability to get your dog license. So just a reminder that June is the month to license your dogs if you live in Simsbury. So you would be able to do both. We hope that you will be able to stop by and participate in the clinic and or register your dog at that event. It's being held on a Saturday, which we're really hoping that will help working folks who have a difficult time getting in during the month of June to register their dogs during essentially a Monday through Friday. So this provides a weekend opportunity for them to do so. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Maria. Moving on now to Selectmen action. Item A is possible action on the proposed stormwater connection ordinance. So there's a few ways that we can go tonight. One would be approving the ordinance or adopting the ordinance as is. We could approve the adoption with minor changes. If more substantive changes are needed, it would need another public hearing. Or we could table it until our next meeting if members feel, for whatever reason, they need more time. So I wanted to open it up for any discussion and just see where people's heads were at with this one.
I do have a question, if it's okay, and I don't know if Mr. Roy can answer it, but for the average homeowner, and because I'm sure that most people aren't paying that close attention to it, when you're washing your car or, maybe above ground swimming pool or something else that discharges water, how does this affect that?
Good question. And Adam's here to kind of help us out, Adam Ketzler from engineering. My understanding as it would be right now from a residential standpoint, the amount of discharge associated with washing your car would be negligible and does not fall under this permit. However, a commercial operation, such as a public works facility, would not be allowed to wash their commercial vehicles and have the runoff water go into a catch basin. It needs to be collected and treated, whether that be, there are some companies that do it, literally will come in and wash your trucks, they collect the water and they bring it back to a wastewater facility for treatment. Or as we did at Public Works, we invested in the truck wash so that water goes to the WPCA where it can be treated properly. And the reason being is as you wash, especially commercial trucks, things other than just your basic road grime can come off in oils and contaminants that you don't want into the
Is there anything else that the residential homeowner needs to be aware of with this? Is there fertilizer or, things like that?
It's funny you bring that up because when the first draft of this came out, one of the things that we looked at is some of the requirements that the state originally had imposed were quite onerous on the town, such as street sweeping 12 times a year on every single road. So we would be sweeping the streets in the middle of a snowstorm possibly. It was very onerous, and at the same time, they were not looking at things like phosphorus from lawn chemicals and the impact that has on our local waterways. They took an approach, they were not looking at residential homes, they were not looking at that level of contamination, they focused more on municipal requirements. The only place where, again, this would come into effect with a homeowner would be, and this ordinance is very specific to the illicit discharge. So if somebody hooked up a floor drain in their garage out to a catch basin in the street, now they're working on their garage, potentially leaking fluids, that would be making its way into the nearest water body. And that's what we're trying to protect against with this.
So if you're the guy who likes to work on your car in their driveway,
If you work on your car in your driveway, you're fine. If you decide to put in a floor drain
Okay.
without going through proper permitting,
Right.
Okay.
and that's
Okay.
what it's there. And a lot of times that would be a great example if somebody may not know. They may not realize, what they're doing is wrong or potentially harmful. A lot of communities a couple years ago went around and put metal stickers on all of the catch basins where it said it drains to a water course. Because so many people in certain areas were dumping motor oil, for example,
Right.
down a catch basin thinking that it goes to the sanitary sewer, and it does not.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure people are aware how this might affect them.
Yeah, good question, Cheryl.
Tom, how does that affect, every time the fire district has erected a new fire station, and they put in the proper floor drains with I think there's including filtration systems in those floor drains as well. But then they come out and, as they did for the Memorial Day Parade, certainly they're proud of their equipment, but they wash that large tower on the front apron of the fire station, and then the chemicals and grime come off of it, and then right onto Hot Meadow Street, and then move along, so.
Yeah, I believe the floor drains in the fire district, all of the firehouses are going to the sanitary sewer. So they're not making it out into that same system. It's the
Except that
wastewater.
they're washing the trucks outside the building.
If they are washing the trucks outside the building, that wouldn't be the correct way to do that.
So they-
Same as, even
As a
if-
former fireman who, as the grunt, had to wash plenty of trucks, they never did it inside.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we have the exact same challenge I have with my own staff, where we have, years ago, we had an exterior setup for washing down the trucks. It's a big platform with a fire hose, they can lift up the back, and just the other day, I saw somebody using it, I had to make sure to go over and tell them, nope, you have to go and use it inside now, because again,
I'm just, with this kind of ordinance, if it comes online, nobody's doing anything nefariously, and then nobody's trying to circumvent. It's all about education, awareness, and
Right.
communication.
Right.
So let's not put somebody in a position where they unknowingly cause a problem for themselves.
Exactly.
Especially if it's coming online and it's,
yeah, and this ordinance is not looking at any of those surface discharges. This is only looking at what would actually be getting directly into a pipe. The other thing is, as a larger part of the MS4 program, not as part of this ordinance, there is a big public outreach component. And we have to, each year in our reporting, tell the state how the town went about promoting this, educating this, and providing this information. When we were working with the state on how this final product should look, I can tell you most of the towns, and Simsbury included, said really we would rather have seen a state-level education and outreach program rather than having it be done at the municipal level, so that, again, you're sending one larger message with a much louder voice than a bunch of smaller messages. With that being said, I think we have the resources to get the word out. It's something I think we do well in town. And just to your point, something we want to make sure that we don't have people making a mistake that they don't know.
Thank you.
Of course, I'm going to ask about financial impact. So I know it says in our packet that we're going to get an estimate for the 1920 budget process, but I mean, are we talking about 10,000 or are we talking about $1 million of potential cost for implementation here?
Two separate answers to that one. In terms of this ordinance, I'd say there's effectively no cost.
Okay.
The ordinance is simply a tool that we're going to have in the larger MS4 compliance. When you look at the MS4 impact on the town of Simsbury overall, I'd say the number is south of $1 million, but probably somewhere closer in the $30,000 a year range. When you look at the reporting and the testing, we may be able to offset some of that cost by doing some more of it in-house, but it's pulling some of our internal resources to do that.
What happens if we ignore MS4?
You know, I thought you might ask that question. It was interesting, for years, there were communities that did not comply. We recently, as they've really kind of ramped up and looked for higher compliance, and we always have complied, they actually did send us a not very nice letter saying they didn't feel that we had hit all of our objectives in our first reporting under this new permit. My belief would be, first and foremost, we could potentially be called upon for not doing our civic duty in terms of protecting the environment. I also think we would potentially be in jeopardy for any grants through DEEP and potentially even larger through the state of Connecticut.
Any other questions?
I have one there. So, Tom, this ordinance is really designed to look at it more from a residential viewpoint, because the residential and municipal viewpoint versus a commercial entity, because they're kind of are similar but different rules for them for handling their property, correct?
This is not meant to be a tool for enforcing an industrial permit, for example, but this does protect us for basically what this would allow us to do is any commercial or industrial facility or residential facility that connects up to our system that was discharging illegally, this gives us a mechanism to enforce and disconnect make sure that, again, that we're protecting the local streams that I think are so vital. The other thing, the larger thing that this permit does talk to is, I love the name of this, directly connected impervious area. Very exciting stuff for us engineers out there. And what it talks about is areas of the built environment that no longer allow for water absorption. You cut down a forest and you build them all, you went from a lot of trees and grass and earth that could very readily absorb that first inch or two of water to rooftops and asphalts and sidewalks, and you end up with smaller storms that are much more flashier in the small streams. And one of the things that this looks at doing, and the simplest analogy is, if your roof gutter goes directly from your roof right down onto your driveway, your roof and your driveway, right to the street, it's all connected impervious area, where if you can turn that roof leader, let the rainwater run out across your lawn before it gets to the street, it slows everything down. And by slowing it down, the streams swell much less over a longer period of time, which is better for everyone. And I think we talked briefly before the meeting tonight about the problem that recently in Virginia, where they had an intense rainstorm, very built-up environment, and a real tragedy is.
I think one of the things we probably want to do is somehow incorporate the intent of this into our land use regulations, so that as new roads get built, and ultimately circle back to make sure that our existing storm drains are compliant, and someone hasn't inadvertently added a drain to that, which would then impact us. I could see that as part of the, both probably ultimately the WPCA and also planning and zoning, to make sure that the site plans that are approved not just comply, but
And I also think the building
resolve.
official as well.
And building official, yeah.
On a procedural note, did the language for this statute came from the state, or where did it come from?
The general framework came from the state. Staff then made some changes. We then worked with legal. Staff made some more changes, went back to legal.
So I assume it meets all the requirements of the state,
Yes.
except for the amount of the penalty, should there be any? That was within our discretion?
Correct. So we made some modifications in regards to the dollar amount. We had discretion in terms of who and how we would designate individuals to be able to enforce the ordinance. And we also actually picked up on something that the model ordinance did not pick up on, which was the appeal process.
Right.
And there is actually a state statute that governs the appeal process, and that would need to go through our hearing officer. So we actually incorporated language in that regard, and that's also consistent with some of our other regs, such as wetlands or blight.
Are there any other areas where it differs significantly from the state?
I don't believe so.
No.
Okay.
On the penalty side, is there, if someone had a first offense, is there leeway such that we would be able to provide education to them without levying a fine?
I would say certainly so. I think even as we sat down to talk about it, our goal is to fix the problem, not to impose penalties. I don't think any of us are going to be quick to go that route.
Right. And I think that was another, for example, where the model ordinance, I believe, initially had suggested pursuing these matters criminally. And again, we felt that, really the emphasis should be on education and correcting the problem. And that we would only be pursuing these matters criminally if somebody was truly just an extreme violator, repeat offender, et cetera. And so we felt that, pursuing the matter civilly just made more sense in terms of, again, this being more of education and correction.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I'm reading this again for the fourth time. Section 10, monitoring of discharges. The Department of Public Works shall be permitted to enter and inspect facilities subject to regulation under this ordinance as often as may be necessary to determine compliance with this ordinance. Again, in keeping up my theme of what we talked about on the water ordinance, does that mean Public Works can go into anybody's property whenever you want to check for compliance? Without
The way I would take
Probable
this is if there was a pipe on a dry day that was discharging chemical into a wetland, that would be generally the only reason that we would ever be going into anybody's property. It was
So
once we saw a pipe discharging on a dry day saying that something is wrong.
So I agree that that's how you would implement it, but that's not what this says. This says you can go in anytime you want, as often as you want, to determine compliance. It doesn't say, at least in this section, you have to have probable cause to show up. So is there somewhere else in this ordinance that says you have to have probable cause to show up and inspect?
I think that's a good point, Sean. I mean, would you have any concerns about adding some language around probable cause?
I would have no problem.
I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I
Or
watched Cops a few times.
Well, I never have, Sean, so
I'm
I
not,
didn't
and
know.
again, I'm not suggesting you would ever do that, but my same issue with fining waiters and waitresses for handing out glasses of water with the prior ordinance, just because we don't intend to do it, doesn't, we shouldn't have the power to do it.
To Sean's point, I would actually add that you shall be permitted to request for cause to enter the property. So you gotta have a reason to be there, and you've gotta request it, as opposed to, you knock on the door, you gotta let me in.
Well, but there are emergency situations
Well,
that,
that's true.
as Tom mentioned, that if there
No,
was
that's a good point.
a chemical leak somewhere.
I agree with you, but we've got the Bill of Rights for a reason.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
So how do we then balance the necessity of enforcement in an emergent situation which is a very low probability, with the concerns that Sean has around the freedoms and rights of the property owner? I mean, it almost be like if we can't take care of a potential problem to mitigate a larger problem while we wait to make sure that the proper paperwork is in place, it does nothing to, we're not gonna be able to mitigate the problem.
Well, and I think to kind of play this out a little bit larger,
I just kinda wanna get through this and sort of.
yeah, I think if you put down, some level of probable cause, which again, there's a bar to be set there, which, we would probably set at some level of discharge occurring. Knock on the door, we say, listen, we need to go in, we need to look at this, and the person says no. At that point, that's where the fine would come in, because at that point, we're stopping. As you said, you've watched Cops a few times, I'm not going in on this one for that. And I think it would be, at that point, beyond this ordinance as to how that would be handled.
Well, and wouldn't the issuance of a complaint, either by a resident or another business, or
But generally,
trigger that
again, the thing that
inspection?
would trigger this general is either odor complaints, something in a catch basin, somebody smelling an odor, okay, let's find out where that's coming from, or, somebody's near one of our outfalls and they see, again, on a dry day, that it's discharging, whether it's water or whether it's something else, and that would implement doing that investigation to find out what the cause could be.
I want to make it clear, I have no issue with doing this. We need to protect our waterways, but again, as Chris, we can't trample on individual property rights either. We've got to make sure we stay in line there. So whatever the attorneys say for whatever the trigger is for probable cause, or whatever the right word is, I'm fine with. I don't know what the right legal term is, but I think we need to just be clear on that. That the town of Simsbury is not going to carte blanche show up at your facility on a, just because your neighbor calls in a complaint, we're just going to walk into your house or
That's
walk
right.
into your facility and start tearing through your pipes. None of suggesting you would do that, but technically this says we could.
And so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, section 10BA,
Yep.
that we would want to ensure that first paragraph there, that it's for probable cause. So however we phrase that, but that's the paragraph that we're talking about. making
Wherever
that
it
more
belongs,
clear.
and if I've
Okay.
missed it somewhere else where
Okay.
there's a trigger in the definitions, so be it.
Okay.
But again, not trying to be a pain in the neck here,
No,
but
that's
this is
okay.
the same
No,
thing we
that's-
ran into with the other one. We've
That's
just-
good, Sean.
I'd have to think across every municipality, all these municipalities we have in this country, in this state, there has to be some type of language that allows for for the good of the community, for the community to have that access. So there's got to be language out there that balances both parts of what are the concerns that we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
So maybe a little more research by Dee internally, and maybe just to firm it up and add some clarity, that's all. Because I think we all agree in spirit of why, what we want to, if it's an occurrence, what we want to have for the benefit of our townspeople and protecting our lands.
Sure, we can definitely take another stab at this particular paragraph with the intent that you've just described. We'll run it by Bob. I don't anticipate that this would be considered a substantive change. If it were a substantive change, we would just have to schedule a second public hearing, but I don't believe that that would most likely be construed as a substantive change.
Yeah.
But we could just clean it up
No,
and bring it
and
back for the next meeting.
And I think it goes to this, that was always the intent, but again, it's
Right.
not written clearly.
Right, so we can clarify.
And then again, in the case of an emergency, we're going to block the pike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Are there any other substantive or non-substantive changes, or any other questions that anybody wanted to?
Promise I won't say anything else.
I know, I'm going to ask one more, but
Sure.
the permitting process, do facilities who have stormwater discharge now have a permit, or are they going to have to get a new stormwater discharge permit? And are we going to have to educate people around that?
It goes to industrial facilities. Industrial facilities need to have stormwater permits. So within town, the WPCA, the Public Works facility, the golf maintenance facility, those are all considered, they meet a threshold to be an industrial facility, and we have a higher level of reporting and training and everything else that needs to occur.
So that would be a new process that they would go through?
That is a relatively new process. Mike, I believe your facility.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Well, under the permitting process, there must be enforcement provisions.
Right, but the industrial stormwater permit is going to be managed at this point by Connecticut DEEP.
Yeah. Deep does.
So that's a different thing than the town
Right, they're
enforcement.
not putting the permit in
Okay,
with us.
just so we're clear on where we're
At this
going
point,
with
they
the,
may change that on us at
okay.
some point in the future.
Probably.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? So I would propose that we have a motion to table this till our June 11th meeting, when they can come back with some proposed language.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do you feel like you have the direction you
Yeah,
need for that?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, thank
great.
you. No, that's okay. Rather get it right.
Okay, so moving on now to item B, which is the Neighborhood Assistance Act proposals. Earlier this evening, we had a public hearing on these two items. I wanted to see if there were any additional questions or thoughts from the board before we put this to a vote.
Just to be clear, so when we talk about NAA funding requested, we're actually talking about the ability for these organizations to get businesses to get tax offsets. So they're not actually getting this money until someone donates it to them, right? Which is unfortunate, because then there's an extra step to it, so.
And it's not from the town.
Right.
The dollars are not
Right.
from the town coffers.
Right. Okay. I mean, again, I have no issue with this, I think it's great, but obviously it puts another step on the ambulance and the Grange organization, as Susan articulated, to then go out and raise this fund, so.
That's right.
If you get these grants, we have a microphone and a TV, we'd be happy see you during public audience to maybe facilitate that, so.
Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So is there a motion effective May 30th, 2018, to approve the Neighborhood Assistance Act program applications with the non-substantive changes that Melissa described, and to authorize Town Manager Maria Capriola to submit the applications to the Department of Revenue Services? Further move to designate Deputy Town Manager Melissa Appleby as the municipal liaison.
So be it, so moved. Second. So be it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wrong form of.
Right, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item C is the recommended appointment of the Culture Parks and Rec Director. So we are going to be moving next to the recommended candidate. I'm going to butcher his last name. It is Tyburski. Okay, great. My thanks to Chris and Mike for serving on the search committee. He is Maria's recommended candidate. I wanted to see if either Maria or Chris or Mike wanted to add anything.
Sure. I've prepared a statement, but I'll,
Please.
okay.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, thank you. So we did conduct a competitive recruitment for this position, and again, just want to reiterate my thanks to the Board of Selectmen members that helped and participated in the process. And Cheryl actually did a pinch hitting situation for us in the first round, so thank you very much for that.
Happy to.
As well as we had a number of our Park and Rec Commission members, including David Bush, who actively participated in the recruitment. So thank you to you as well. So it's with great enthusiasm that I recommend Tom Tyberski as the preferred candidate for the position of Culture, Parks, and Recreation Director for the town of Simsbury. Mr. Tyberski currently serves as the Parks and Recreation Director for the town of Granby, in which he has served in that capacity for 7 years. Prior to working in Granby, Mr. Tyberski admirably served our community for 12 years in the capacity of Recreation Supervisor. Early in his career, he served as an Assistant Operations Manager of the International Skating Center of Connecticut. He holds a bachelor's degree in recreation management from Springfield College and is a certified Parks and Recreation professional. The Culture, Parks, and Recreation Commission has approved Mr. Tyberski for appointment to the Culture, Parks, and Recreation Director position. As you may recall, the charter requires that as part of the appointment process. Mr. Tyberski is available to begin work on a part-time basis on June 26th. He is able to begin work full-time for us on July 2nd. Jerry Toner is able to remain on staff on a limited basis during the transition for us. We are fortunate to have a preferred candidate with a proven commitment to serving our community with the utmost professionalism and dedication. During the recruitment process, Tom demonstrated a vision and creativity that will continue to move the department forward while respecting the incredible foundation established during Jerry Toner's tenure. I'm confident that Tom will carry on the tradition of exceptional stewardship of our parks, our recreational facilities, and our open space. Should the Board of Selectmen support the recommendation of Mr. Tyberski's appointment as Culture, Parks, and Recreation Director, I am certain that he will do an outstanding job in this role and serve our community well. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Maria. Anything else that Mike, you wanted to add?
I would just totally support that. We had a good interview process, and Tom rose to the top, so congratulations.
Good.
Oh.
Anything? No, just,
Oh,
I don't want to put you on the spot, if there's anything you wanted to add.
I was just smiling. I just admiring him. I think one of the things that I was most pleasantly taken aback by was that we had a number of qualified candidates that expressed interest in this position. And in many of those candidates were longtime professionals from well-established communities. And that really spoke to me about what Simsbury is then, because it was a job that professionals who had already been successful elsewhere were seeking for Simsbury as their next step. And that's how desirable our community is from its people, its character, its aesthetics, what we believe culture, parks, and recreation is. And we took, we get the best of the best, I think. So we're excited for it. And I know that the committee, Mr. Bush, put a ton of work into this, and they have complete faith as well in the candidate as well. So I welcome Tom.
Yep.
Great. Any other?
Just to disclose for the record, so Tom, I don't know if you remember me, but I worked for you at ISCC. Tom and I go
That's
way
when
back.
ice melted. The shift that Sean was on.
It was a pool.
Zamboni hit the wall.
So I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to drive, and for good reasons. But Tom laid down one of the best sheets of ice in that building. So I'm looking forward to working with you again. So welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And I have a motion to make a conditional offer of employment to Thomas J. Tyberski for the position of Culture, Parks, and Recreation Director, and to appoint Mr. Tyberski to the position effective June 26th, 2018, with an annual starting salary of $112,500 and employment-related benefits assigned to that position.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that passes unanimously. Welcome back to
Welcome to
Simsbury.
Yes.
Please, please.
Excellent.
I thought you were giving us an envelope.
So thank you very much for the opportunity. I am very grateful for this opportunity to come back to Simsbury and to be able to work with such a talented and experienced team. In sports, you often hear the expression that you never want to be the man to follow the man. Jerry Toner is leaving some very big shoes for me to fill, but I consider it a great honor to be chosen to follow in his footsteps. I will do my best to use the things that I have learned from Jerry and the others I have worked with over the years to make sure that the Simsbury Culture, Parks, and Recreation Department continues to meet the high standards he had set. I look forward to working alongside my fellow employees and the board to make sure that Simsbury continues to have well-run and well-maintained recreation facilities and to provide exciting opportunities for residents to safely enjoy them. Thank you again very much.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Yes.
Great. Moving on to item D, Handicap Parking Awareness Month. So the Aging and Disability Commission is working to educate the community regarding the appropriateness and legality of handicap parking. And you're taking, I'm saying you, I'm looking at Ed. The commission is taking various approaches to raise awareness, but one thing they're asking Board of Selectmen to do is to designate June as Handicap Parking Awareness Month. And I wanted to take the opportunity, just, the bully pulpit of SCTV, to just, if you don't mind, just give just a little bit, if you could hit on a couple of bullet points around, what are things that people might not know or be considering when it comes to handicap parking.
The 6 years we have requested this designation, primarily, as Cheryl is showing,
Oh, yeah, thank you.
lines are there for a purpose. One of my commissioners, Mike Jennings, who's a wheelchair user and has a wheelchair van, has on many occasions parked and had somebody park next to him and to cross the hatch marks, enabling him to get into his vehicle, having to call the police for assistance. So Mike, actually 6 years ago, was the impetus on the commission in putting this forward. He's our best educator, if you will. We have already done a segment on SCTV that will be starting air in the month of June. We work closely with the Simsbury Police Department with the education, and we also work with various town departments to put forward the education process to the community at large, just as an information type of basis. It's been effective in the past 5 years. It's been very effective for the month, and we'd love to continue this further.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
A
Okay.
minute is a minute too long.
That's right.
Just saying.
Is there a motion effective May 30th, 2018, to designate June of 2018 as Handicap Parking Awareness Month in the town of Simsbury?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So I know that we all have social media accounts. If there's anything that, I'll just speak for myself, but I'm sure other board members would too. If there's anything we can distribute or help to get the word out for educational purposes, please let
I'm a
us
little
know.
old for the social media end, so I have other people working on that.
Okay.
Much younger than I am, so, but yes, we will do that as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And finally, item E is the Henry James Memorial School renovation Phase 3. So on May 1st, voters gave the green light to the Henry James Phase 3 renovation project, and the Board of Education is applying for a Connecticut school construction grant of about $5.7 million. So for this process to move forward, the Board of Selectmen is asked to approve 3 resolutions. Before we read those into the record, Burke, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I guess in light of the comments from Dr. Rinaldi, just to say that the good news is that this Phase 3, as approved by the voters, does not in any way prohibit the Board of Education from considering a grade reconfiguration and doing a 6th grade wing, and that's why a feasibility study was done for that on a preliminary basis. So just with that background, as you stated, these resolutions in this item is for us to move forward with this grant process. And it's the same process we followed with other school projects, both Henry James Phase 1 and 2, as well as roofing projects for Central School, Squadron Line Main office. It's just part of that grant process.
Any other questions? In that case, Chris,
Can I just say, just to be clear, if we don't do this, we don't stop the project, we stop our ability to get state reimbursement, correct?
Correct.
So we would end up costing the town more money if we don't do these resolutions.
You'd be delaying for inflation once again.
But the project's happening.
The voters authorized that
Voters have already
project,
authorized
and
it.
the board supported the project in the capital plan.
So this is deferring some of that $24 million cost through state reimbursement. If we don't take action tonight or vote no, we are not stopping the renovation. We're just costing the taxpayers more money over the next 15 years on a bond issuance standpoint.
Right.
Bert, do you know what the total is on the grant? I could add it up, but I'd be wrong.
Well, it's an estimated reimbursement of $5,749,619.
That's the total on the whole project?
That's the total estimated reimbursement percentage, and the grant, the budget for the project is $23,965,620.
Right.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Chris, would you mind reading the resolutions into the record?
So I move the following three resolutions. A, resolved that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the Town of Simsbury Board of Education to apply to the Office of School Construction Grants and Review, and to accept or reject a grant for the Henry James Memorial School Extension Alteration Phase 3 project. B, resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby establishes the Permanent Public Building Committee as the building committee for the proposed Henry James Memorial School Extension Alteration Phase 3 project. And C, resolved that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the proposed Henry James Memorial School Extension Alteration Phase 3 project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, and that passes unanimously. Thanks, Bert.
Thank you, Mark.
Moving on to appointments and resignations. Is there a motion to reappoint Oliver Dickens as regular member of the Housing Authority with an expiration date of April 21 of 2023?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. And is there a motion to appoint Heather Dawson as a regular member of the Recycling Committee with an expiration date of December 2nd of 2019?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that passes unanimously. Any feedback on the minutes from the special meeting on May 21st?
Can you point me to the minutes where I got a 0? Who said
You gotta
that?
go back to the SCT.
I'm gonna have to watch
Preparing
that.
for the future.
I have my suspicions on who said that.
We're not
but
changing that.
I'm probably a member of my own party, so.
Come on now.
Okay, hearing no changes to the minutes will stand as presented. Any liaison and subcommittee reports?
Well, I think you hit on the Community for Care.
I did, but say it again.
Program, but we're very pleased to have one of our members, family therapist Mark Lehman, is going to give this project on So You've Gotten Into College. Now what, as the parent of somebody who's just finished their freshman year of college, I think it's a great opportunity to get some information about what your child is going through, now probably your young adult child, how it's going to affect both you and them, and it's a big transition. You know, you learn something with each kid who goes through this, but they have found at different colleges and universities that it can be quite traumatic for a lot of kids to make this adjustment to college life. And this is a way for you to ask questions from a very knowledgeable therapist and get some advice on maybe how to handle those conversations with your child as they go off to leave. And sometimes it's the parents that are having trouble letting go too. Half of the programs I sat through while dropping off my kids were directed to me. No, we're not going to tell you this. You don't get to know that. So I think it's helpful for both parents and their children. There will be pizza served and a lot of opportunity for good conversation, so I would encourage anybody who's in that situation to attend.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Any other subcommittee or liaison reports?
If anybody wants to get up early, public safety is at 7 a.m. tomorrow, so.
Don't forget the donuts.
Yeah, don't make the same mistake I did last time.
So I'd just like to say, in my 3 years as chair, I've never once forgotten the donuts or the coffee.
There's also a record length.
Nor
as
have I
well.
ever let that meeting go
That's
2
right.
hours, so we'll be back on track tomorrow morning.
Fixed a lot of problems from the previous few months, that's all.
I tell you, these new kids messing everything up.
Okay, any other reports? Okay, good, thank you. Anything, there were 2 items on communications.
We're good.
I just wanted to elevate one of them. So, you know, we've heard some concerns from businesses around parking around Performing Arts Center events, and I just really appreciate Missy DeNuno, the new executive director of PAC, and the PAC board for working with the town and business owners on this. So there's going to be some changes that they're going to be trying in the coming year to make sure that that people are directed to the lots they should be parking in, which are down on the southern side of Iron Horse, not in the Fitzgerald's parking lot, to be precise. So I wanted to thank them for that. Anything else?
I think that's excellent, because that's been feedback we've gotten from day one. So it's
Yeah.
really excellent to see that organization taking it seriously, because I think there's, as you articulated, there's a better chance to be more integrated with the business community and to have a partnership versus somewhat adversarial relationship that I think has existed in the past.
Yeah.
Well said.
Okay. So finally, is there a motion to adjourn to executive session with Maria Capriola, Melissa Appleby, Michael Glidden?
Just the two of us this
Oh,
evening.
just the 2 of them? Okay. Bob
and Bob, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Bob.
Bob DiCrescenzo. Will
Bob.
Jesse be there?
Not Jesse this evening.
Okay. So Bob, to discuss pending claims litigation for the Deepwater Wind appeal and the Pavlik versus Town of Simsbury.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I just want everybody to know, this is really cool.
I was just about to plug it in, but my battery ran out right at the end there.